Hi friends, welcome back to Books Past Bedtime. Today we are going to be just hopping into a quick little video, and I'm going to be doing the queer book tag. This was created by my friend Anja. Her channel will be linked down below. You should definitely go follow her. She is a very creative person, and she has actually created a lot of original book tags that really celebrate diversity in your reading, so I would 100% recommend you go subscribe to her. She is a very sweet, supportive person and deserves all the love. So basically, this tag she has created is the queer book tag, and it is celebrating queer literature. Most of the questions kind of follow the LGBTQIA+ acronym, so I think that's really fun and creative, and a lot of these books I have mentioned before on my channel, but they are so good and deserve all the love, so let's just get right into the tag. The first prompt is queer faves, and the question is, what is your favorite queer book you have read so far in 2021? And for me, that is probably The Extraordinaries by 𝗕cie 𝗷𝘀𝗀. This book follows our main character Nick, and Nick is a big fanfiction writer. He writes fanfiction for the Extraordinaries, who are the superheroes who exist in Nick's world. He basically writes this self-insert fanfiction with his favorite superhero, and it's as cringy and embarrassing as it sounds, but we were all there in high school, or a lot of us at least. But he kind of learns that his favorite superhero is not everything that he seems, and also there is a little friends to lovers side romance once Nick stops being oblivious, and this book was just really cute, and for sure one of my favorite queer books that I have read so far this year. At its core, it is a male-male romance, but there is a lot of casual diversity within this book that I absolutely loved. We have a female-female relationship in this book as well, and lots of different representation in race, gender identity. I loved this book. I thought it was so good and so fun, and would definitely recommend to everyone. And starting in on the acronym, the first letter in the LGBTQIA acronym obviously stands for lesbian, so this prompt is to recommend your favorite lesbian or female-female book. And for this prompt, I couldn't not talk about 𝗕vie 𝗷 and 𝗦𝘂𝗃 𝗵𝗻. These are middle grade books, so they're not necessarily women-loving women romances, but they definitely have young queer girl representation in them, which I think is so vital and important, and these books are just amazing and heartbreaking. 𝗕vie 𝗷 is basically about our main character Ivy, who is struggling with a lot of things in life. Her mom just had some new babies, and so the attention is no longer on her. She feels a little bit left out of her family, especially when her family forgets her birthday. Her family has also had their house destroyed in Hurricane Katrina, so that is a lot to go through, and Ivy is also grappling with the fact that she might be attracted to girls, so there is a lot going on in Ivy's life, and I absolutely love this book. I think it is one of the most beautiful books ever written. I sobbed so hard reading it, and I just think it should be recommended, required reading for everyone. Similarly, 𝗦𝘂𝗃 𝗵𝗻 is about our main character Sunny, and Sunny has just recently had a heart transplant, and previous to that she wasn't really able to do a lot of the things that other girls her age can do, so after she gets her heart transplant, she makes this list of things that she wants to accomplish now that she has a new heart and can do so. For example, she wants to learn how to surf, and she wants to meet a new friend and have her first kiss. She accomplishes the first couple things, but then she decides that she might have a crush on her new girlfriend and might not want to have her first kiss with a boy at all. These two books are just beautiful, sapphic, queer stories about young girls realizing that they might be attracted to other girls, and the representation just warms my heart, and the stories and the writing are just so powerful and perfect. I love these books so much, and I just can't give them enough praise. The next letter in the acronym is G, obviously standing for gay. So the prompt for this is to recommend your favorite male-male romance, and I know that this is basic, but my favorite male-male romance of all time is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I am so obsessed with this book. It is an enemies to lovers between the first son of the President of the United States and the Prince of Wales, and this book is just so outrageously fun. It has some of the best banter in any romance that I have ever read. I love the friend group in this book as well. All the characters are just perfect. This book just is pure happiness on paper, and I just truly have never read a better male-male romance. I love it so much. It is one of my favorite books of all time, period. The next letter in the acronym B stands for bisexual, and the prompt is to recommend your favorite book featuring bisexual representation. Now, this is one that I just read recently, and that is Take a Hint, Danny Brown by 𝗕lie 𝗷𝘀𝗽. Going into this, I didn't know that it had bisexual representation, so that's kind of why I wanted to mention it here. Our main character, Danny, is bisexual. Prior to her relationship with Saphir in this book, she was dating a woman, and being bisexual is just a part of Danny's identity, and I really like the representation in this book because it's never questioned. Dani is never put down for being bisexual by anybody in her life. It's just an accepted part of who she is. The love interest never says anything about it. Nobody ever says anything about it. It's just a fact, which I think is one of the best ways to do representation in books. One of my favorite things. Obviously, stories about trauma and things are important and valid, but it's also good to just have very positive representation, and that's why I really loved this book. So if you didn't know, this is a romance and it follows our main characters, Dani and 𝗕𝗓. They actually go viral after 𝗕𝗓 saves Dani from being stuck in this elevator, and they realize after going viral that this is really adding a lot of positives to their life. So they decide to fake date for a while and eventually fall for one another. And like I said, I really loved in the story that Dani is just unapologetically bisexual, and so I think that this is a great book to recommend for this prompt. The next letter in the acronym T obviously stands for trans, and this prompt is to recommend your favorite book with trans representation, and for that I'm going to recommend Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. In this book, our main character 𝗕𝗓 is trans, and his family is really struggling to accept that fact about him. And this is a huge bummer because in 𝗕𝗓's family, women are witches and the men can raise ghosts, and 𝗕𝗓 really wants to go through the ceremony where he can have the ability to raise ghosts, but his family doesn't want him to, doesn't think he'll be able to. So he kind of goes off on his own, tries to prove himself on his own, and kind of creates a mess. He accidentally raises this boy Julian from the dead, who he goes to school with, or not from the dead, he raises his ghost, and Julian didn't even know that he was dead really, and is like, what's going on? So they're trying to figure out what's going on with Julian, as well as getting 𝗕𝗓 in the place that he wants to be. And 𝗕𝗓 and Julian end up having this little romance. I loved this book, it was so good. 𝗕𝗓's cousin is also bisexual, so there's lots of different representation in this book. Both of the main characters are also Latino, and this book is just a lot of fun. It has so many awesome elements. The characters are great, the plot's exciting, the magic system is really cool. I love all the cultural elements. This is a very rich book and I love it so much and will never stop recommending it. Q stands for queer, and this prompt is to recommend your favorite Voices queer book, and for that I'm going to recommend The Death of 𝗕𝗓𝗄𝗃 by 𝗕𝗂𝗃 This story follows 𝗕𝗃. At the beginning of this book is found dead on their mother's doorstep, and the story kind of goes backwards in time leading up to this event and kind of explains why this happened and goes through 𝗕𝗃's history and what led to this tragic, terrible event. I absolutely loved this book. 𝗕𝗃 is gender non-conforming, so I would personally put them under the queer umbrella. 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗃 also uses they/them pronouns and is gender non-binary, so this is definitely an Own Voices book. It's also set in Nigeria, so it's really interesting to see that those cultural elements and how they play into what happens in this story. This was one of my favorite books of 2020, and I definitely think it's worth the read. It is beautifully written. The characters will stick with you forever. It definitely is a bit of a traumatic read, so I would be cautious going into it. Make sure you're in the right headspace for it. Maybe look up some trigger warnings, but overall this is one of the most beautiful books I have ever read, and I will never stop recommending it. Next is A, that stands for 𝗕𝗓𝗄𝗃, and the prompt for this is to recommend your favorite book featuring a romantic or asexual representation, and for that I have to go with The Loveless by Alice Oseman. Now a disclaimer, I haven't read a ton of books with 𝗕𝗓𝗄𝗃 representation, but I did absolutely love this book. This is by far my favorite that I have read, so I'm going to recommend this one. This book basically follows our main character Georgia, and Georgia has always been obsessed with rom-coms and fan fiction and just love in general, but once she gets to college she's kind of looking around her, realizing that everybody is in relationships and doing things, and she's kind of wondering if that's even something she is personally interested in. And so throughout this book she is kind of dealing with coming to terms with identifying as asexual. I absolutely loved this book. One of the best elements of this book is the found family trope. Georgia has some really great friends that really support her throughout coming out and coming to terms with herself, and I really loved that aspect. I also just really felt for Georgia and related to her. This is such a good book, and I would 100% recommend. Next, Pansexual. Recommend your favorite book with pansexual representation. This one was a little bit hard for me. I have read quite a few books with pansexual characters in them, but I haven't really loved any of them. But then I did remember that We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. The love interest in this book is a Latino pansexual guy, so this one definitely works for this prompt. I absolutely loved this book, and this is probably the only one on this list that I haven't actually talked about on this channel. And this book basically follows our main character Henry, and Henry is abducted by aliens, and the aliens give him like 140 some days to decide if he wants to save the planet before they annihilate it. Although this might seem like an easy decision to a lot of people, Henry is really struggling with depression and a lot of things are going wrong in his life. His boyfriend died, his mom is having a hard time, there's a lot of different moving parts, and when he's first given this option, Henry is more leaning towards the side side of just get it over with. This book has some really great mental health rep as well, and I actually really love this book, and I really love 𝗕𝗙 and his writing, even though his books tear me to absolute pieces. I definitely would recommend this one, and I think it's really good, and it is one of my favorites that has pansexual representation. The next prompt is QPOC, and it is to recommend your favorite book with QPOC rep, and for that I think I'm going to talk about Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is another one that, like I was talking about, just has very casual representation in it, which is one of my favorite ways to consume representation, because I think it's just very important to see normal queer people living normal queer lives. So that definitely happens in this book, which is one of the aspects about it that I absolutely love. But if you didn't know, this book is basically about two sisters who don't know about each other until their father dies in this tragic plane crash, and then they realize their father has been living these two separate lives and that they actually each have a half-sister, and so they actually end up connecting and forming a relationship at the same time grieving the death of their father and trying to reconcile the man they knew with the man that they find out he actually was. This is a very powerful story with themes of family and grief, but also one of the girls has a girlfriend in this book. She is just very supportive, very much there for her. She's not a huge focus of the book, but she is there in the background, and I just loved that. And it wasn't really a thing, it just was, which again, one of my favorite ways to see representation. I absolutely love this book. I think it is so beautiful and definitely one of my favorite books with QPOC rep. And then the final question is queer new releases that you are still excited for coming out this year. I have a ton. If you want to go watch my video that I just put out about my anticipated releases, there are definitely a lot of these are listed in that video, but I will just go through a few right now. So I'm definitely excited for The Ghost We Keep by Mason Deaver, The Darkness Outside Us by Elliot Schaefer, One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston, Indestructible Object by Mary McCoy, Like Other Girls by Britta London, and Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. Obviously, I have a much more extensive list, but those are just a few that I am excited for, and that was the queer book tag. Thank you so much for watching this. Thank you to Anja for creating this tag. Also, make sure you go subscribe to Anja. She is amazing. Thank you again for watching this video. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter if you feel so inclined, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you liked it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.